If it's time, then we'll start sharp at 7 as promised. I'm going to invite all of you to put yourself on mute. You can keep your cameras on if you like or off, whatever supports you. But do keep yourselves on mute so that we can cut the background noise. And rest assured, every time you need to speak, uh, you can unmute yourself on your own. Just keep yourself on mute. And with that, let's get started. So good evening to all of you from India and from other places who've joined in. And special good morning to Peter, who, as many of you know, is based in Orlando, in Florida. Very early in the morning for him. And thank you so much for making this time. We have, I think, over 40 or 50 people who've signed in and registered and coming in slowly through the waiting room and to the Zoom session. And they're all enthusiastic and aspiring coaches. And it means a lot to me, Peter, to have you here and also to have all the others who've joined us here. So thank you, Peter. I also want to welcome all the prospective coaches who've logged in and on time. And I can say with absolute certainty and great comfort that I know each one of you, either through a WhatsApp message or through a long email exchange or through multiple phone conversations, or some I know even more closely and are dear friends of mine. But welcome to each one of you, and thank you all for your meaningful questions. To ensure that we optimize time today, I'm going to moderate the session in a question answer format. What I'm going to do is that all the questions that you have sent in, I've tried to weave it together into a nice cohesive story, and I will go through that. And if there is time at the end to have any more questions that may come up during the session, and we can get you to come in and ask those live, then we'll do that. Just let's see how this all goes. So just a few housekeeping rules for those who've just joined in. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and if you find your bandwidth is fluctuating, then you may have to put the video off. But just to let you know, we have a very strong connection. And so if you want to keep your video on, that's also perfectly fine. Of course, I'd like to thank my great Back to Source team, Monica and Nidhi, and their unconditional support, tremendous love, and their great sense of ownership is really what makes this the perfect team for me to be able to do my life's work. So thank you. Okay, so let me set a little bit of context for today's discussion. The prime objective of the open house is to support each one of you who are considering coaching as a modality to bring into this world. You may choose to bring it as a profession that you want to engage with, or you may choose just to enhance the kind of quality of conversations that you have, or whatever work that you're currently doing to just be more effective at doing that through coaching. And we'll address all those aspects through the time that we're going to spend together. As many of you may already know, I forgot to welcome our dear coaches as well. I'm sorry about that. So whenever I send out an open house session, it's really for people who want to be coaches. But all our past participants somehow figure out that, Peter's coming on to a session and there's no way that we can keep them away. And so welcome to each one of you. I know some of you have shared some questions, which I will try and bring in today. And I'm sure that it's going to serve the group. But thank you for making the time to be here and reabsorb this absolute divine presence that Peter will bring to today's session. So coming back to where I was, many of you already know that Peter has been coming to India for now 12 years, in person for 11, virtually for the last 1 year now, bringing training coaches to take on coaching as a modality to support other people. This year, some of you have even signed on for the program. We're running 2 batches. The first batch is completely full, and we have our second batch. And to keep that intimacy of that program, we don't take more than 24 participants, and we do have still 10 seats left in the second batch. So I do hope some of you will be those 10 who join us on this amazing journey. So having set the stage and the context, let me bring all my focus and attention to Peter, who is my mentor and one of the founding pioneers of coaching. He's the primary facilitator of this program that each one of you have shown such deep interest in. And with that, let's present the legendary coach, master coach, MCC, Peter Redding. Peter, I really welcome you again and just invite you to share a few words to flag off this session, and then we could take a deep dive. But thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for organizing this so beautifully, Amrita and team. I have great gratitude for what you do, how you do it, and with such enthusiasm and passion. So thank you for the opportunity for me to be here. And I don't know, the first words I would say is thank you to each of you for having even the concept of becoming a coach or bringing coach-like competencies into your current work. They are all life-affirming. They are all supportive for those of you that are developing people in your current positions or have children that you want to bring this philosophy into the house. So I am passionate about coaching. I've been passionate about coaching for 25 years, and I'm even more passionate now about what coaching can do for an individual, a family, a community, an organization. So I look forward to your questions today.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And I know, Peter, like I shared earlier as well, that you've been contributing to training coaches in India per se, for now close to 12 years. And when I checked the last time, you were the only MCC in the world who had personally traveled to India to train in one single country, now 650 coaches. Wow, isn't that, just the thought of that, makes my head spin and feels very grateful that we're chosen to take this work forward and continue to bring it in India. Immense gratitude. Just want to share with it just, as we spin this off, is what is it that motivates you to keep doing this work now for 26 years? Personally, what is it that motivates you?
I believe this is my work to do while I'm here on the planet. It really boils down to that. It's part of my life's work, to support people to know who they really are, and to support people that can support other people to know who they really are and make better decisions about their life, their career, their health, their family. This is my work to do. So, personally, I'm coming up on the first 2/3 of my life here within the next 2 years, and then I have another third after that. So I'm gearing up. I'm gearing up for the last third of my life to do this work. And so this is a drop in the bucket for 11 years or 25 years. I figure another 37 years after that. So I'm charged.
Wow, aren't we blessed just to hear that, right? And that's a perfect curtain raiser, Peter, and ties in with one of our participants who's on the call today, called Kanaz Bilamoria. She asked, will it be okay for you to share a few experiences of yours? And I did share back with her that there will be many, many such stories that Peter and I will keep sharing as we go along through the program. But it's a good start to just get a glimpse into the world of a master. Yeah. I'm just getting some chat messages saying the volume of Peter's is a little low. Peter, may I request you to just raise it a little bit, please?
Let me see if I can't get my microphone a little bit closer to my mouth. That will generally help. How's that?
Sure, Prapti, Charmaine, can you give me a heads up if you can hear Peter now? Because I know that you're here really to hear him. So
Is
I
that
just want to
better?
ensure that you can hear.
I can hold my mic a little bit closer to my mouth. Better, perfect, coming
Perfect.
through. Yeah, okay, great. So,
Okay.
okay, story, a little background story of Peter Redding. I was in India in, I'm going to say around 1987. I visited Delhi, and I visited Mumbai, which is at that point called Bombay by most people. I got really sick. I was living in Tokyo, Japan at the time. I got amazingly sick after coming through, and I caught something that the doctors in Japan said was amoebic dysentery. I was very unimpressed with India. People that said, "Oh my God," my neighbor said, "I love going to India. It's the seat of life." I said, "I can't. If I ever go back, it'll be too soon." Okay, that's a true story, by the way. 1987, I'd say that was. When I was invited to come to India to do training, my first reaction was, "No, thank you. I'm not interested." And it I'm going to say divine guidance. I've been led in my life, particularly over the last 37 years, of divine guidance of this is my work to do. And so I agreed to do that. It fell into place, just bang, 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 from Santosh Babu, who was the original person that contacted me, or one of his people actually contacted me. And it's been a divinely guided journey ever since. I love working in India. I love the people that come to it in India. It was meant to be. And again, not because I willed it to happen, not because I even wanted it to happen, but because it was meant to happen. There's lots of other little mini chapters to that whole story, but that's what got me to India in the first place in 2009. That's when I first visit was to India, 2009. September was the first batch. And yeah, I'm a blessed man because I listen to, and I can agree to disagree with my divine guidance. I give myself permission to do that. But ultimately, I acquiesce, if you will, and said, "Okay, all right. If you want me to be there, I'll be there." So that's yeah, insight into Peter Redding history for India.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. And on that same note, I've shared with every single person I've spoken to with great pride that the program that we offer is a spiritual based coaching program. In fact, for me, that's the single most reason that I find this work so meaningful. Whilst I've shared my perspective with everybody that I've spoken to so passionately, it always continues to raise a number of questions around spirituality and coaching. So, with your permission, if we can take a deep dive into that. Yeah,
Happy to. Yeah, happy to. So
super. So, I
what's the question about spirituality and coaching then? Does it
sure.
work?
I'm glad that Nobita is on this call, and I'm going to start off with her first question. And I'll read exactly as she framed it. And she said, "I'm not aligned to be a performance coach. That's not who I am. My inclination lies with spiritual development. So I'm looking for studying coaching formally, more as a life coach working with people who want to work on themselves as a soul. Will this course help learn how to be effective in this space?"
Wow. Well, the short answer to that is absolutely yes. the there's still a lot of performance coaching, results coaching, accomplishment coaching. That's all attached to the doingness of life. Okay, so particularly executives, particularly people that come from out of corporations, they're still in the doing mode mostly. And so a lot of coaching, even today, worldwide, globally, is that concept of, how can we get this guy to do more? How can we get this woman to do more, have better performance or increased performance. Um, that's a piece of what we do, but it's only a piece. And I think it's the topical, the transactional piece of coaching and life, frankly. For me, if that's the kind of coaching that a client comes to me with and wants to do, I turn them down, frankly, because I don't have time for that. I want them to go deeper. I want them to be ready to be going deeper, to go to their soul, to go to their spirituality, however they define that, by the way. We're not religious. We don't just do Christianity. We don't do, Hinduism. We just don't do any of the other major religions of the world, although we've had all of them come to our training over the course of 25 years. I've had Jesuit priests come to our training. I've had bishops in self-realization fellowship come to our training. I've had as far as I can remember, all the major religions that have a faith-based way of living come to our training. What we do is the sense of spirituality is, number one, that a belief that there's a divine presence, there's a belief that there's a universal intelligence, there's a creator, there's lots of names for that. And we honor each person's belief system around what they hold as their divine and how they honor that. Now, the payoff in coaching is spectacular, because I believe that every human being has that, I'm going to call it a God spark, okay, or a creator spark within them. Now, a lot of people have forgotten that they have that. A lot of people have been conditioned or programmed out of that because the focus and so much of life is around performance. What have you done for me lately kind of attitude. But I believe that there's also that yearning inside for that to be recognized, for that to be honored, that God spark, that inner soul. And what we do at Coach for Life Institute is let's rediscover that. Our discovery process is not about, okay, so tell me about your job and tell me about your transactional goals that you want to achieve in the next 6 months. Again, that's not all we ask. We do ask those questions, but beyond that, deeper than that, is who do you want to be? Who do you want to come back to in terms of your innate spectacularness, your innate brilliance, your innate magnificence? And that lies 100% in the realm of spirituality. It just does. And so people rediscover themselves. I had a gentleman, an Indian student that I had early on. He had retired from the armed forces. I think it was I want to say the Army. Might have been the Air Force, but anyhow. So a very senior guy. I think he was in his late 50s, early 60s. And after we went through the discovery process that goes down to that depth of being, he said, this is the first time as long as I can remember that I've gotten back in touch with my original self, is what he referred to it as. And I would really like that. I like that concept of, there's that embryo, that embryonic part of me that I have long not nurtured. I've long not been in touch with. And for me, that's the internal guidance system of a human being. So when I can support my client in coaching, and our coaching model is all around that. It's, to summarize the coaching model that you'll learn at Coach for Life is a fulfillment coaching model that says, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. I mean, that's we bring in the divine nature as well as the human nature. So that's what we do. That's what we've done. I had people early on, 25 years, can't do that. You won't get any students. Everybody comes from corporations and they don't want to deal with spirituality, or in America, we have to have the division between church and state. So you're mixing the two up, Peter. You're blah, blah, blah. We've done very well, thank you. And again, all divinely guided. So I don't know if that answers that question specifically or if there's more pieces to that, but I can't imagine doing coaching without the spiritual component. I just can't. It's like taking, okay, I only want to coach 20% of this human. The other 80%, you're on your own. Go to the mosque, go to the temple, go to the church, go to your guru. I can't imagine doing that. For me, it would be, incomplete coaching.
And I can say ditto to that, Peter. That's how great a student I am in imbibing all that you've taught and in really making that my own. So thank you for that experience, and I'm look forward to everyone else on the program and through the program, through all the clients, for each one of them to really have that experience of reconnecting with that original self that exists. And I think that would have also answered, Nidhi's question, Nidhi Das, who's also on this call, about learning about the whole connection between spirituality and coaching. And moving from there, and you alluded to it a bit, really, there's a person called Raj. I'm not sure if he's here on the call already. He said he would join in a little bit late. But just to hear that aspect of large part of coaching, especially in India, is offered within the corporate workspace. Uh, Almost 95% of the work that I do or Nidhi does is all in the corporate workspace. So when coaching leaders for business results, how does one integrate the spiritual aspect of coaching? Is there an openness? And oh, Raj is joined. Thank you. Is there an openness and acceptance of the same? And before I get you to really share your perspective, just wanted to say one of my hugest quests in life is to raise this consciousness within corporations in India. And so my short answer to it is that yes, 100% it works within the corporate workspace. There is a great openness, and it really stems from the way that I bring that in my presence to the organization. But that's my short answer. I'll leave the long answer to Peter.
Thank you. Again, the very short answer is yes, people are open to it. The culture that I grew up in is American business, all right, American corporations. I worked for a huge pharma company, Eli Lilly, for 13 years, a division of it in the medical electronics arena. And it was very corporate. We were a fast-growing entrepreneurial company that Eli Lilly had purchased about 3 years after I had joined that company. So I understand the corporate culture, backwards, forwards, ups and downs, good, the bad, the ugly, all the whole shebang. And so, again, when I got into corporations, it was, no, you don't talk about spirituality. You don't talk about religion. You leave that to the person to deal with at home. And yet, my experience now, for the last 40 years, 50 years, has been that every human being has some form of spiritual connection, whether it's real conscious and highly practiced within their spiritual tradition or not. There is a yearning inside every human being to reconnect to that, to be guided by that being again, that sense of connection with their creator, their God, their gods, their higher power. And so even coaches, and I did an international conference of the International Coaching Federation in London back, I don't know, a number of years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago. I actually gave a presentation on how do you bring spirituality into coaching. And I had very senior coaches there, MCC coaches, my peers, that said, I've always been tentative. I've always been working on eggshells around this topic. How do you do it? And it's like, ask. Do each client, do you have a sense of a divine presence in your life? If so, what is it? What do you name it? What do you call it? How do you honor it? and ask like a coach would ask. If they say, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist, I'm an agnostic, I'm a whatever, then say, fine, that's okay. I'm not going to then say and talk to you around the divine if that's what you're not comfortable with that at all or don't believe in that. And so I had one client. I'll give you an example. He was out of the California justice system back a number of years, a very high level, state political position. And I asked him the same question. Do you have a sense of a divine presence in your life? And he said, no, I don't believe in God. I said, okay. So when you're really, really stuck and you really, really, really want to have an answer to something that's really important to yourself or to a loved one in your life, where do you go to access that answer? I said, oh, that's easy, Peter. I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and I go down to my gut. And an answer is always there for me. I said, okay, great. So for the year that I coached this fellow, I never used the word God because it was inappropriate. I just used the gut. When he got stuck, I'd say, okay, so I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, take a nice deep breath, nice meditative breath, if you will, right? Go down to your gut, and what is it telling you to do? What's the right thing to do in this situation? Never had to use the word spirituality, God, God, any of that. And so that was one person out of perhaps, I don't know, at this stage, probably 300, 400 people that I've actually personally coached over the last 25 years. The same thing in corporations. I ask the individual, I'm not asking the corporation to put on their website, yes, we are a spiritual organization. That's inappropriate for me to say that. But for each individual that comes out of that, I can definitely ask them about their sense of spirituality and then use that word or not use that. We use terms like life purpose. We use terms like your core values. We use terms like your natural gifts and talents, as opposed to God-given gifts and talents, or what's the divine purpose that your life is all about. Now, if the person is divine, has a divinity or a spiritual tradition or practice that they're in, then I can use that and frame it within that context. I'll give you one other example, kind of a quick example. I work with very senior people in educational system. They were the supervisors, they were the senior management people of a public school system in the East Coast of the United States. And as you may know, the public school system here in the United States, again, has that very clear, definitive, there has to be a separation of church and state. Okay, it's in our Constitution. So there's very contentious things that go on within the public school system here that says you can't do prayer at the beginning of school because it might honor somebody's God, but not somebody else's God. And we don't want to have that influence at a young age, blah, blah, blah. Okay. When I work with the individuals out of that exact school system, I ask each one of them, do you have a belief system around God, around spirit? And all of them said yes. Said, I don't necessarily practice it a lot, but yeah, I grew up as a Christian or I grew up as a whatever. So my point is that when you're working as a coach, it's typically one-on-one. It can be group coaching, and we teach that part of it as well, but most of it's one-on-one coaching. And be bold enough to delve into that part of life. Be bold enough to ask. And that's what came out of that conference that I did in London. And they all came back out of it. Many of them, my peers, like I said, very senior MCC coaches. And I said, wow, it's so simple when you say it because, and I gave them a little form, one-page form. Here's the 5 questions I ask, okay? I said, of course, why wouldn't I ask that? So I think a lot of this is cultural. That no, you don't go into that territory with a person, as their boss, as an executive, as a coach, as a whatever. Have the courage to ask, and in a lot of cases, I have reintroduced that individual back to their source.
I can almost envision that coming through. But thank you for sharing that. And as you say, to be that sense of being courageous, I just want to reassure and reaffirm is that the brilliant work that Peter has created, and that he brings in terms of the philosophy, the framework, the mindset. We really teach you this in the program on how you can bring that conversation around spirituality and consciousness within the boardroom without really, in a very practical manner, and raise that bar. Sometimes without them even realizing that you've raised the bar, they just begin to experience and operate from a different space. So the other thing that I share with almost everyone is it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to learn from a living master, the legendary Peter Redding himself, right? And I know that whilst you have been delivering this program in person for so many years, how has this transition to this virtual platform been for you?
Yeah, it's actually a great question because I resisted. I've done a lot of our training virtually, but not part one. Part one, it was sacred to me. It had to be the depth that we go to, like we just talked about in terms of the training around the spirituality piece and the self-discovery piece, which every coach experiences for themselves in terms of the processes that we support the coach to do with their clients. The actual coaching student goes through it for themselves to see the power of it, the magnificence of it, the clarity of it, and so on. And so I have resisted for 25 years, well, 24 and a half years now. But part one is in person. So it's always been either a 4-day or a 5-day in-person process. And I refuse to do that virtually, even though platforms were there to do it virtually. And we do part 2 virtually. We've done part 3 virtually, we do part 4 and part 5. All the rest of our training we do virtually, basically. But I was so convinced that it wouldn't work as strongly and as deeply virtually as it does in person. I said no. I do not want to do that virtually because of COVID and because literally 24 hours before my flight to Mumbai in March of this year, that I was coming over to teach 2 batches. Again, Amrita had them all lined up, 24. So there's 48 people waiting for me to arrive in Mumbai. The Indian government shut it down. We have COVID. We're no, other than residential visas are going to be honored for incoming flights and all that. So Amrita and I both have talked about, we have 48 people waiting. COVID looks like it's going to be shut down for a while. Do we want to try to do this thing virtually? And I had trepidations. I did. I knew we could convey a lot of the concepts, a lot of the exercises. Yeah, no problem. But there was some in there that we just said, oh, can we really do this justice and provide the depth of training? And again, I think this is spiritually led. We needed a big knock upside the head with COVID to say, okay, get off your belief system that it can't happen any other way than in person. And we leaped into it, both feet, and Amrita and her team did an amazing job of preparation. We reconstructed it so that it could be delivered virtually in modules so that you weren't brain dead by the end of 4 days. We extended it a 5th day to accommodate that. We did all kinds of things. I mean, I'm an expert at instructional design. I just am. It's one of my God-given gifts. And we did it. And the feedback afterwards from people that said, I don't even know that I can learn virtually. I mean, because they were, again, very senior people in their 40s and 50s that never experienced a in-depth training virtually like this. And they're the ones that came back and they said, this is the most powerful training that I've ever had in my entire life. And so it worked. It didn't just kind of work, it worked brilliantly. The interaction, the compliance to doing homework every day and over the course of the next 10 weeks, etc., was the highest that I had ever experienced in my 25 years of doing it. So it was humbling, frankly. It was like, okay, God, I guess you know better. That's another example of Peter being resistant and, kind of being pushed into something and go, okay, I guess, yep, not only can it work, but it can work absolutely brilliantly. So there you go. I am humbled one more time.
Thank you. And I always share that it was as enriching for us as facilitators to engage in this space. And I think the only thing that I can say that I missed was the physical hugs and warm embraces with participants. And I know that there will be a time when we'll get all the virtual batches together and be able to have that as well. So till then, it's virtual and it's an opportunity for us to continue to do our life's work. So there are many also on this call, Peter, who are looking at coaching as a career opportunity, both from leveraging it at their personal current workspaces, as well as straddling an alternate career path simultaneously. And so there's this really curious question from Barney, and she's asked exactly that, that if I'm not practicing as a coach immediately or as much as a full-time coach, then how will what I learn and experience through this program be applicable to the current role that I play as a leader or as a people manager within the organization?
Yeah, again, short version, brilliantly. It just does. We've had past students that are neonatal nurses. Okay, now neonatal nurses work with babies that are this big, and I met with one of them probably 5-6 years after she did the training, and I said, why did you come to this training? It's like you literally cannot speak and have a conversation with the people that you are interacting with on a day-to-day basis. Oh, she said, Peter, quite the contrary. It was brilliant training because I'm treating and I'm nurturing this young, beautiful baby. But I talk with their parents, I talk with their grandparents, I talk with their brothers and sisters every single day. And she said the training was so powerful that rather than me talking a lot and telling them about all the technical things that are going on, I'm a much better listener now. I'm a much better asker of questions about what their concerns are and really hear those deep concerns. She said it was invaluable to me. There's lots and lots of corporate people or entrepreneurs that go through the training, and the feedback is the same thing. I'm a much better listener. I ask better questions. I am more aware and conscious of what's happening with that other person on the other end of the phone, other end of the conversation, other end of the negotiation, other end of the developmental process that I'm going through with my direct reports, et cetera, or the people that I'm mentoring. So it's a shift of mindset, frankly. One of the most difficult things that a professional coach has to do, and I went through this experience myself as a ex-executive and an ex-consultant and subject matter expert in my field, was to stop giving advice and start asking questions and having them do the work. And it took me almost a year to do that when I first got into coaching, because it was an abrupt change of mindset. Even when I knew that I had the answer that could support them, in 80-90% of the cases, I didn't have the answer. Not for them. Not the one that was best for them. But through the discipline of asking questions and being inquisitive and curious, and having them work through the options, having them work through what's important to them was much stronger, much more powerful, and much more life affirming for their journey and their process. So it works both ways. We've also had people that have done both. At the end of their career path, their organization, they're looking at retirement coming up in the next 2, 3 years, 4 years. They want to start getting, they still love people. They still want to be active. They're certainly healthy enough to do so. So they've taken the coach training to work as in their executive roles for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, with the idea of developing a personal coaching practice on the side, perhaps. Now, they can't get compensated for it, and I understand those concerns in the corporate world, but they do it pro bono, or they do it on a benefit basis of, okay, so you can't pay me, so, contribute something to my favorite charity, right, my favorite NGO. And they start practicing coaching as an independent. And so both tracks are going on for a lot of people, especially in India. I've seen that. Now, Amrita talked about people development. Let me talk a little bit more about that. I believe that the world has an advice addiction. And what I mean by that is that people are addicted to asking for advice because they're smarter than me. Geez, I don't know if I take the risk and screw it up myself, then I'm going to be in trouble. So let me ask the advice of the elders, right, in the organization. And there's also a counter addiction for those of us that are subject matter experts to give advice. Oh, thank you so much for coming and honoring me, for seeing the brilliance in me. Thank you very much. Let me tell you what to do. In this situation, here's what I would do. Go do that. Now, what's happened there is zero personal development and professional development. All that you've done is reinforce the fact that they have to come and get advice from you. So now what happens when they get promoted or they're in a promotable position, people are going to be coming to them and asking from their advice, but they haven't learned it for themselves. They haven't learned the act of, what do I need to do to develop myself? It's sad. It retards the development of a human being by continuing to feed them, spoon feed them advice. When are they going to stand up and go through the courageousness of making their own decision, following through on it, seeing what works, what doesn't work? Now, I'm not talking about emergency situations. This is not for the emergency room doctor. My brother's an emergency room doctor. He doesn't go developmental things when the nurses come in and, says, okay, this guy has about 3 seconds to die or to continue to live. What would you do in a situation, Nurse Sally, right? Not the time for coaching. Do this, stat, immediately. Same thing in corporations. If everything's about ready to blow up, then you step in. 95% of the time, that's not the case. It is not as urgent as you think, or they are making it out to be. All right, the whole plant's not going to be burning down in the next 5 minutes. So there's opportunities that are missed every single day in corporations to develop that person underneath you. The leaders that become the top leaders in organizations, my experience in the US here and in India now, in India, is that the people that get promoted are people that are really good at developing people. I'm going to say that again. The people that get promoted are the people that are really good at developing people. If you don't develop people, then you're not developing yourself. So coaching has been talked about in corporations now and proven time and time again that coaching is the most effective way of developing a human being and a professional that exists in the world today. It's the most significant developmental tool to use because it's customized. You're making the person do the work, making the decisions, deciding what the agenda is, and developing their natural gifts and talents. Yeah, I could give you 1,000 different experiences from people that I've trained that have come back and said, "Oh my God, this is the most significant professional development that I have personally had in my career." And these are guys who've gone to Stanford and London School of Business and Hyderabad, management university, etc. That it's powerful. It's powerful, deep, important work. I'll stop.
Thanks, thanks. So this is another question, a dear friend of mine, Harpreet, who's on the call, and it ties in with a question from another prospective participant, Shilpa. I've just tried to reframe it slightly to offer a broader perspective. So both Harpreet and Shilpa are really homemakers, and they want to understand as to how these skills and mind space can be, adapted and applied to their current space, both from the self development space or the self mastery, which you spoke about a little bit, but a little bit more on that, to support them playing their existing roles as more efficiently. And also, as they traverse this path of discovering coaching and seeing whether they can take that on as a full time profession, whether it's really their calling, how would people from this kind of background and this kind of understanding embrace and look at our program.
So let me ask about it. This is a coaching technique, by the way. So homemakers can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What do homemakers mean to the people that are asking the questions? Does it mean as a parent? Does it mean as a spouse? Does it mean as a caretaker for the older generation that's living with them? What does that incorporate? Homemaker.
In India, homemaker would incorporate all of the above.
Got it. Okay, good. All right. So that means that all of the above is being impacted positively by being a coach. Homemaker is as an executive making all kinds of decisions and supporting all kinds of people and activities around the household that they don't get credit for in the first place. It's like, oh yeah, you're just a homemaker. You don't have the heavy weighty decisions that I have here in the corporate world. Well, that's a bunch of bunk, because you're rearing children to come up to be good citizens, be good human beings. You have compassion that you're giving to the older generation in terms of maybe medical care, or again, just being there to listen to them and ask them questions about how they're doing. So it has huge impact, and the coaching, again, the coaching skills are very important in this, but more so the mindset. At what point do you cut that motherly umbilical cord for your child so that they start making their own decisions? There are, again, countless clients that I've had and students that I've had that I've known them and have been coaching them from the time when their children were 12, 13, 14 to the time that they were 25, because I work with people for a very long time. And during that transition, the role of mother changes, or I believe ought to change significantly from, as long as you live under my roof, it's my rules kind of attitude, to, how do I treat them as an adult now and have an adult-child relationship as opposed to a young, growing up child relationship? Coaching will support you to go through that, because at, again, a certain point in time, the advice, the umbilical cord has to change in order for them to grow. When do you release them to their own decisions? When do you support them and ask them better questions about what are you passionate about these days? What are you excited about? What turns you on? Quick little story, true story. One of my students, he lives in India. I won't say the city just for confidentiality purposes. He had a daughter that came to him. She was in the junior year. I don't know what grade, like level 11, maybe, I think would be the equivalency. And she came to him and said, I want to be on a sports team here in school. And that was the year that all the exams get taken, and basically the future of that individual is either embraced or lost or set back, depending upon how well they do in the school grades and the exam process during the 11th junior year. He said, before I took the coach training, Peter, I would have told her absolutely categorically not possible. This year is devoted to academics. Thank you very much. Not extracurricular sports things. So you absolutely cannot do that, and wouldn't have allowed it. He said, because of your coach training, I sat back and I said, I asked her questions. Okay, so what's the passion behind joining the sports team? And she had lots of reasons why she wanted to do that. And so they talked through it. He made some provisos. He said, okay, so I'm going to agree that you can join the sports team, provided that your academics stays at a high level, that you continue to focus on the things that are important for this year to make sure that your future is enhanced by getting into the right schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A year later goes by, he reports back and he says, unbelievable, Peter. Her grades were the highest that had ever been in school because she had a purpose of doing that as well as the sports. The sports team turned out to be in the top tier of competition for their division or however they do that. And they didn't come in first in the province or in the state, but they came in like in second. The surprising thing about it, which really I'm very proud of my daughter, is that she was voted captain of her team. And that brought so much education, learning, experience, confidence to my daughter that would have been denied had I set the thing down as a traditional Indian father would do. And I would have done categorically without the training of asking questions, having them take on responsibilities for what they want to do in their life. Change that daughter's life, change the household's life, change his life as a dad, and they have a much stronger bond now because of it. So it shows up in so many different ways,
Thank you for all the stories as well. I lost Peter in my view. Okay, back. Just another follow-up question, and then we'll circle back with the question that, around coaching and my calling, but just keeping the thread of parenting and, coaching fungibility within the homemaker's zone. This is a very interesting question from Rahul, and he said, what is the one thing that you will suggest to a parent who's raising kids? What are one or two valuable lessons that ought to be taught to the kids, which I can learn from this program? Quite an interesting question.
That's a great question. And thank you for being a parent, and thank you for being a conscious parent already. Here's the feedback I get. I don't have any children of my own, although I consider all my graduates children. So I'm a father and a grandfather, thousandfold. I'm very proud to be that. I think the first thing is modeling. And what I mean by modeling is, are you living according to your core values? Do you talk about it? There are tough decisions that a parent makes as a breadwinner, as a career person, as a father, as a mother. Are you living according to your own core values? Are you living in alignment with your life purpose? Do you have a sense of fulfillment? And you can't hide that. And you can't hide the fact that you're not living according to your life purpose either, by the way. Even if you think that you're hiding it from your kids and you're miserable and you're stressed and you hate your job and you think that you're not sharing that energy with the household, that's false. You are. Even if you don't say a word, people around you know that you're not a happy guy. And that's incredibly sad, because now I'm modeling the fact that I have to sacrifice to the extent that I have to be miserable in my life in order to make your life better. It's an oxymoron. Um, and so by the training brings you front and center. Here's who you really are, not who you're supposed to be because you're an Indian father or mother, not because you're educated, not because you're an executive, not because you live in this section of town. But the depth of who I am is presented to you, and you discover that in training, number one. But by knowing it and then by being it, being in line with it, is two different things. So that would be the first thing I would say, that a parent has, I think, an obligation personally to model living a life on purpose, and not somebody else's purpose, but again, my purpose. The second thing is, and I see a note in here from Nidhi Das that says, you know, showing curiosity with a 5-year-old and asking open-ended questions that show a curiosity and a caring and a loving for that 5-year-old. That again, they don't have the baggage that adults have. They're so honest. They want to be open, and to lubricate that openness, to extend that it's okay to be open in this household. I think is an amazing gift that a parent can give to a child. Again, as opposed to being told, okay, so don't play in the traffic is a good advice for a parent to do, you know, because that's dangerous. But there's so many other areas of, you know, what are you curious about? Be excited about what they're curious about in their life, whether it's dinosaurs or fish or you know, the birds outside, or drawing or music or whatever they're curious and excited about. Dig into it. What makes this so interesting for you? Share that. Get back in that childlike innocence of because I really don't know. Yeah, I'll stop there.
So let me shift and ask the $1,000,000 question, that is, how do I figure out if coaching is my calling? I do this program, I engage with it, but how will I really know if it's my calling? And my short answer to it is that you'll just know it, because that's what happened for me. But I'll leave it back to you to dwell deeper into it.
Yeah. Most coaches come into coaching because it's calling. There's some that are coming into it and say, yeah, I can make a lot of money, and it seems like, you know, for doing 2 hours of coaching, I can earn such and such a month from a client. That's really the minority, and typically they do transactional coaching. They're not really into it for, you know, the deeper development. Here's some of the indicators of being, you know that you're destined to be a coach, and that you've probably been doing pieces of coaching for a long time in your life. Number one, you love people, and you love to see people thrive. That was one of mine. I love seeing my people that reported directly to me. I love developing them. I love seeing them promoted, even though it's at the detriment to my particular division or section of the organization. And I actively developed them. I actively promoted them and put them in a place where they could be seen and considered for promotion. You know that you're a coach when people trust you. They've come to you with their deepest, darkest concerns, angsts, and it probably ask you for advice. That was like, if you go back to, you know, coaching 0.5 version back 25, 35, 40 years ago, it sounded like mentoring. You know, that yeah, I coach them to be a better person, a better executive. But people trust you. People come to you and divulge some of their deepest, darkest secrets with you, and have probably then expected advice, because again, we're addicted to advice, have been addicted to advice for a long time. Another aspect of coaching, and the training brings this more into focus, is how can I be with somebody without judging them? Now, if I'm in a place of an authority, that automatically puts me in a place of judging. No, that's not the way you do that. Here's how you do that. Go do this. Okay, that's the advice giver. To be fully present, it's one of the huge coaching competencies, is coaching presence. Well, what is coaching presence? Coaching presence is I can be fully available and here with you. I can be curious. I can ask questions, but they're not authoritative questions. They're not directive questions. They're not judgmental questions. So that's a huge part of the coach training. Again, changing the mindset from SME, subject matter expert, to I'm here to support you so that you can come to your best answer. And so one of the things that I say, and anyone that's been with me for any of my course trainings, they've heard it 100 times, make the client do the work, which means I don't have to do the work, which I used to do as a consultant. And I loved that work, and I was really good at it, and I got paid buku bucks for it. And ultimately, it's Amrita. You know, you'll know. I want to continue. Here's the question: do I want to continue to support people even at a higher level? Do I have the skill set, the mindset to continue to support people even at a higher level? If the answer to that is yes, then you are perfectly capable and ready to become a professional coach. Again, whether you apply it within your current job description or as an outside independent coach, either way. If you say no, my sister asked me, what is this coaching thing? She's like 20 years ago. And she's like 10 years younger than I am. And she said, oh my God, Peter, I could never do that. I love giving advice. I said, I know you love giving advice. She is not a candidate to be a coach. So if you want to continue to be telling people what to do, don't become a coach. If you know that you love supporting people for them to grow, develop, make their own decisions, move forward in their life, then you're a great candidate to be a coach.
Thanks. Peter, I'm just, it seems the right opportune time to bring in the question from Dr. Narayanan, who's on this call, who's registered for our program, an orthopedic surgeon, doctor as in a real doctor. And his question really is that as you embrace and this whole coaching ladder and move up or down or alongside this coaching ladder, how can what is learned in the coaching program be applied to mentoring? And this aspect that largely mentoring is giving advice, coaching is not giving advice. And so how do the two marry each other? And what is it that he has to take from this program and bring to his mentoring and coaching practice that he envisages himself doing?
I love that question because I'm a huge advocate of mentoring. I still am. And mentoring does not get replaced by coaching. It actually gets enhanced by coaching. When I was a mentor, and I've been both a mentor and a mentee during my lifetime. And so I do imagine two circles here and call this a 1980 coaching mentoring circle and call the next circle over the 2020 mentoring coaching circle. 40 years ago, there was more mentoring that was, okay, because I've been in the organization longer, I'm older than you, I'm more experienced in this kind of vertical or this kind of technology or this kind of organization or industry. There was a lot more mentoring that took place in terms of questions like, in this organization, in order for you to be considered to be promoted, you have to have had marketing experience, management. You've had to have product development experience. You've have to had business background, accounting or legal background. So you have to have kind of like a punch card, with these things punched. Okay. So the mentor was one that says, here's how you negotiate this. Go see this guy who's the VP of blah, 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 and see if you can get into, I know he's got an opening coming up in San Francisco. It means you'll have to move your family there, but you have to get that. Make sure you get online to do that, because that's part of the maturation process and the consideration process for the blah, blah, blah. So a lot of that. So there's a lot of telling and advising and directing an individual. There was also mentoring in those days of, when's the last time that you went to your kid's baseball team or went to the ballet recital by your young daughter, etc. I noticed that you've been doing a lot of traveling and not spending a lot of time with your family. Do not neglect your family. Okay, so there's that level of mentoring as well. Now, 40 years ago, the career path of individuals was predictable in most industries, most companies. You have to put in your time here. You have to spend 2-3 years here, this level, 2 or 3 years here, 2 or 3 years over here in this vertical. And that's the way that you get ahead in this organization. Okay, now fast forward 40 years to now. It's a gig economy. There's no predictability in terms of you're going to have this job 6 months from now, let alone 16 years from now. So the mentoring has shifted, and the coaching component of let me go back. 40 years ago, there was a component of this, what we're talking about now in peer coaching. What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What interests you, et cetera? That was that piece of it, but it was like 25% of the puzzle, the pie chart 40 years ago. Now it's flipped. 75% of the circle for 2020 coach mentoring ought to be pure coaching, ought to be what we're talking about here today. Having them figure out what they're interested in, having them figure out what they want to develop, having them figure out what natural gifts and talents that they haven't developed yet fully could be developed further. 25% of the 2020 coaching mentoring circle ought to be pure mentoring, because there's some things that haven't changed. Career paths have changed significantly. What has not changed is personal relationships with family members, your own health and welfare. Are you taking good care of yourself? How many hours of sleep are you getting? That's not enough. You can't work 24/7, 365, even though the world is operating that way. Now technology connects us so that we can do that. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. What are you doing for your own self-care? What are you doing to regenerate? What are you doing with your family members? If COVID's taught us anything, it's like get back in touch with your roots, which is your family, right? So specifically to the question of how does the training help, it focuses on the personal side. It focuses on again, are you living according in alignment with your core values, life purpose, natural gifts and talents? And how do you have a mindset to bring that to your mentees that are young doctors, that are young healthcare professionals? And 75% of that time with them ought to be, in my opinion, around asking questions of them in terms of, what turns you on? What are you excited about? What are you doing to further develop your natural gifts and talents of whatever they're interested in? And it may not be function related. There are people that have gotten away from their hobbies that they dearly love because they don't have time for it anymore. Wow. Who made that decision for me? What influence or conditioning has come into it that, doctors don't have time for personal things? My brother is a doctor. My sister's a registered nurse, has been. Another one's a phlebotomist. I've worked in the healthcare industry. I understand the pressures of medical, and even more so now in COVID, right? Being exposed to that. About 2 or 3 family members um, in contact with a confirmed COVID patient. Okay, one that worked for the VA hospital, and another one that worked in an emergency room. My brother. And so they go through 12 days of quarantine and testing and all of that business. So there's a lot of pressure. And you're still a human being. What are you doing about that? Are you taking time for yourself? Are you taking time for your interest that gets away from and clears your mind, your psyche, your energy, and regenerates you? Has huge impact on all that. And again, so it's the skill set of coaching and the mindset of coaching that will play a very important role in you developing your people that admire you and hold you as a mentor, as a guru in your field, to remind them of how important the other parts of life are. So don't burn yourself out.
Thanks. Thanks, Peter. So I'm just going to shift gears to some really tactical questions around the skills that we teach in our program. And this first question is from Shalom. And his question is that once I get the coaching certificate at the end of 5 days from Coach for Life, how do I actually go about starting my coaching practice? And how does one begin that whole coaching wheels, either within the organization or outside? And how is that addressed through the program?
Okay, so the first part of that is you have to be confident in yourself that you know that you can coach. That's the first part. And we spend a lot of time on having you practice coaching, getting feedback about coaching, having you ask questions about, did I do this right, or how could I have done it better? There's a ton of that goes on in the coach training. In part 2, which is the webinar series afterwards, like an hour and a half every week for over the course of 10 weeks, basically. We skip a week, but over the course of the next 10 weeks, a good third of that, maybe 4 of those, even 5 sessions, are talking about the business of coaching. Who are my clients? Who ought to be my clients? Who am I, quote, qualified or have compassion for to be my right client? So we talk a lot about how you define that, how you articulate that, how you can answer questions about what is coaching. So it's really basic questions that come up in that process of talking to people about coaching. You will develop some special tools for your particular affinity group. So if it's medical staff or if it's doctors, then your, if you will, coaching wheel will be different than somebody that's in an executive role in finance, for example. Then it'll be different, or for the homemakers, or for people that are entrepreneurs. So all of that is covered in part 2. In terms of getting clients specifically, it's, let people know that you're coaching. People say, I don't have any clients. And I say, well, how many people have you told that you're a coach? Nobody. I'm afraid to tell that because I'm still a new coach. Well, that's the first issue then, is let people know that you offer this service. It's a coaching service. And I can do it, sometimes it's offered pro bono initially, that I want to get practice doing it. Practice makes perfect. Typically, people that get started in coaching seriously are the people that are nearest to them. It's their colleagues, it's their university mates, it's their people in the organization. It might be family members, although you have to be kind of careful about that because you want to be able to still hold the space of non-judgment. So we tell people, don't coach your spouse or your kids, at least formally, for the first 6 months or a year, because you have to be arm's distance. You have to be non-judgmental. And so if your spouse comes back and you have a 2-income house and the spouse comes back to you as the coach and she says to you, I'm thinking about leaving my job. And you go, oh, no, you're not. We have university bills coming up. Then that you just lost the relationship of confidentiality with the client. So you can't do that. That's not good. but go to the people that are around you and say, you know, I would like to offer my coaching services to, you know, to help you develop yourself, help you to make major decisions in your life. And that then gets the momentum going so that you have references, you have the confidence that, yes, I can support an individual. A big part of this is for you to convince yourself that coaching is valuable. If a coach doesn't have that, then you're not going to be able to, quote, sell yourself or sell your services or offer your services, because I don't know, this is just, it's like I don't add anything. I don't tell them advice anymore. So it's an autobiographical thing going on that holds you back. But as soon as you go, oh my God, this is more powerful than telling people what to do, it's like, it's a whole different ballgame. Now you can't help but share it and say, you have to experience this. And if I'm not a great coach for you, I just graduated with 23 other coaches that are spectacular. And one of them specializes in working with moms that are, you know, empty nesters now and going back to their corporate work. I'll put you in touch with her. Okay. So that's how it works. And that's the beauty of the cohort and the batch that goes through, that you'll get to know a whole bunch of other coaches pretty intimately. And each of you will have shared along the way, this is the kind of coaching that I want to do. I want to work with executives to get them revitalized. I want to work with entrepreneurs. I want to work with doctors or medical staff, etc. So the model that we teach is universally powerful. And I'm going to say for each coach, even though you could coach with this coaching model anybody, don't coach with somebody that you don't have a context with. Okay? If you don't understand their world, then you're not the best coach for them, even though you're not going to be giving them advice and all that. But to have compassion for someone that is a top-level executive, if you've not been a top-level executive and don't understand the pressures of that and the context of that and the language of that, that's probably not your best client. Your best client is probably somebody a whole lot like you.
Thanks. Peter, there's another question tied into this coming in live from Sue Sneha, who's on the call. And she's asking that how much prior experience is required for a participant before embarking this program, as in prior coaching experience before they get onto the program. And does the program help develop a coaching offering for groups and professionals? And if I've just realized that this may be my calling, and I have no coaching experience, can I still do this program?
Yeah, I would say that 95% of the people, well, maybe it's a little bit lower now, maybe 80% of the people that come to training over the last 25 years have had zero experience of coaching. They've never been coached professionally, or if they think they've been coaching, or they think they've been coached by somebody, when they get into the coach, they go, oh, that was really advice giving. That wasn't really coaching. So the experience part, there's more of a desire and a willingness that is much more important than the actual experience, quote, the experience of coaching. What was the second part of the question?
Is that, will the program help me to develop a coaching offering for groups and professionals, even if I've never had an experience?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. All the principles that we teach in coaching, typically it's one-on-one coaching, but there's a lot of times where it's, we can apply those one-on-one coaching skills and mindsets to a group or to a team. So there's one whole session in the part 2 that's devoted to, here's like a 3-page detailed outline that we provide you with how to start a group coaching, how to name it, how to determine who should be part of that, confidentiality around the group, the guidelines of all of that's all laid out and outlined. And you'll actually develop, as part of the exercise of that particular class, if you were to do group coaching, we don't say that you have to, but if you were to offer group coaching, how would you articulate those things to communicate that out to the population of people that would be appropriate? Okay. I'm a huge advocate of group coaching. It's a great way for people to experience coaching at a lower expense, frankly, and a lower vulnerability point, because they can be listening to others that are in a similar situation. And so they don't have to do all the talking, and the spotlight's not going to be on them for the full hour or 45 minutes of the coaching session, but maybe for 5 or 10 minutes it will be. And then they can kind of sit back and kind of listen to other people's process and not be in a hot seat, if you will. So all of that is included in the coach training program that we offer. Yeah.
I think we have time for just one more question, and I think this is quite a pertinent question that's just come in. And the question is that, is it essential that before I coach others, I need to be highly sorted myself as a person?
I always encourage you to be highly sorted. I do. It's self-mastery is, I think, the number one component to being a master coach. And so I tell students, even on day 1 or day 2, you're learning the skill set, you're learning the tools, you're learning the craft, you're learning the organization, you're learning the structure, all of that, the language of coaching here in the first 5 days, and really over the first probably year of, you're learning the tools of coaching. Ultimately, what will make you a masterful coach is your self-mastery. So you're, and I don't know of any coach that's 100% sorted, by the way, including me. This is a lifetime journey of self-mastery. But by having that sense of self-mastery, I have more compassion for myself as a human being. Yep, I screwed up. Yep, I wish I would have done that differently. Yep, I'm going to try to do that better the next time. And so there's much more compassion I have at this age than I did at 37 years old, when, I lambasted myself. I lashed myself for, I don't know if I'll ever recover from this one. I have. Isn't that nice? Good news. So the self-mastery is a huge part of it. But please don't try to be the perfect person or the perfect coach, because there's no such thing. And the more compassion that I have for myself, the more allowance that I have, the more consciousness that I have around the decisions I make and how I am as a human being, plays an indirect role in my coaching, that I can have more compassion for the people that I coach, that I train. Kind of visually, if I have this much compassion for myself, and that's the world that I live inside of, then that tends to be the amount of compassion that I have for those that come to me. And if they get outside of those borders, now I start getting into judgment. Like, okay, so you've tried this now 6 times. When are you going to actually do it? That's from this space. As I become more compassionate, you're not going to be able to see my hands out of the picture here, but it's, like 6 feet worth of compassion. Now that's a space that I can offer to my clients. Okay, so it didn't work this time. So now what did you learn about not having it work this way? And what's next for you? Very open-ended questions, very compassionate, not judgmental. And that's the way that I can coach now. So, yeah, don't have the objective of life of being 100% sorted.
Thank you. and as I always share, is that when you choose to become a coach, you put yourself on the path of self-mastery, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and that's just a marvelous path to keep walking on as well. So, Peter, in closing, if you can summarize really what would be your perspective in terms of the key differentiators of our program offering as you see it. I've shared with all of them as I see it.
Yeah. Having a very strong spirituality, peace, and philosophy and environment around what we teach, how we teach it. The coaching model itself embraces that, is a huge one. I mean, it's monumental. There's lots of coaching training schools that, say, yeah, we do body, mind, and spirit, and give it some play, but it's woven into everything that we do, into the space that we create for ourselves, into the standards of presence that we talk about. How do we want to be with ourselves and with our fellow learners in the batch, to the coaching model, to the kind of feedback that we provide, the learning spaces. We look at the positive and reinforce that whenever we see it. We tend not to do critical critique and say, okay, yeah, well, you did this well, but there's 14 things that you didn't do well. Knowing that what we focus on expands. So, I mean, it's just, it's ingrained in everything that we do. The second differentiator is that we really do look at anchoring the decision-making process that is naturally going on between coach and client back to themselves. What I find is that most people in the world are unintentionally directed by outside forces. What I mean by that is, this is the way I have to behave in order to satisfy what my mom and dad taught me to be a good citizen, to be a good human being, to be a good man, to be a good woman, to be a good provider, to be a good husband. I was molded by my educators. Okay, you have to learn this to be successful. Regardless of whether that's my natural gift and talent or not, you have to develop that. Well, that's a waste of money, frankly, if it's not a natural gift and talent. You'll get very little return for that. But if I don't know what my natural gifts and talents are, if I don't know my life purpose, and I can't use that as a GPS, I can't use that as the North Star, I can't use that as my compass for the decisions that I'm making that are important to me and my family and my organization, then there's no grounding to the decision-making process that is relevant to me. So I find people that have made decisions based on what they're supposed to do, or because they're comparing themselves to their batchmate from university days, and they end up 15 years later and they go, I don't even want to be here. I hate this place. I hate my job. I hate my life. But now I've invested so much into it. I'm dead. I have to, the golden handcuffs are on me. And so I have to do this for the next 5 or 10 years for the sake of my family and what they've expected in terms of a standard of living. Okay. And that brings tears to my heart. It does. As opposed to, I think one of the privileges that I have as a coach is to say, okay, now imagine yourself 10 years from now, and you've made this decision to take option B. Because of the training that we provide in this coach's training, I can actually now have them imagine themselves 10 years from now and ask them very specific questions. To what degree is this satisfying your life purpose? Wow. And some come back and go, not much, or very little, or hopefully, yeah, maybe 80%. Whew, fantastic. And so by having that sense of self-discovery, deep, deep self-discovery, I have tools that no other coach training school offers. They may get into strength finders, they may get into values, but not to the depth that we've developed over the last 25 years. To be able to support myself as a human being and to support myself as a coach, but more importantly, as a coach, to support my clients to ask those kinds of questions and have the way of the processes to get at that core of the individual makes it spectacular.
It is. And thank you, Peter. I'm sure that each one has really benefited from being here and spending that time. And I'm pretty certain that there will be 10 who will make it to our next batch very quickly. And for the others, they'll join when the time is absolutely right for them. And just to know that the door to Back to Source and Coach for Life is always open whenever you choose to walk in. And with that, I'm going to hand back, Peter, if you have any final comments to say. and Hari, who's our veteran coach and participant. Many past participants, like I shared earlier, you can't keep them away. If we're doing something, they must be here. And a lot of them are here, but Hari requested if he can close and acknowledge. After you, Peter, I'll hand back to Hari to close the session today.
Okay. In closing, I'm just going to be very simple and say I am deeply grateful for your time and your presence in this session. Be the best human being that you were created to be. If that's coming to our training, great. If that's not coming to our training and doing something else, then that's also great. And I honor that path for each of you. So with that, I want to just thank Amrita and Monica and Nidhi, the team, the Back to Source, to have this all be possible today and beam me in from Orlando, Florida. And God bless to all of you, and namaste.
Thank you. Hari.
Thank you, Peter. My wife is my coach, actually. And she and my sons tell me that you are enjoying life during the lockdown. They keep saying this to everyone they meet. I think I owe that to you and Amrita. So that summarizes the entire thing I heard in the last 90 minutes. So the amount of self-transformation, it's still work in progress. It's humongous. And just to give you one, the first coachee whom I did pro bono, he got his job in an Australian company. He explained how he transformed himself through coaching. So I think that's where I really felt, yes, my master has helped me. Thank you very much, Peter and Amrita. I think it's been fantastic, so I don't miss any session of yours. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Evergreen all-time support angel. Thank you. So with that, we've really come to a close. So I'm going to get Nidhi to please request you to put off the recording.